Good morning. Good to see everybody here this morning. Old friends I haven't seen for a while, people from out of town. So it's good to see everybody. Some even came from a lot further than out of town. So it's good to see everybody here. I'd like to take this opportunity on behalf of Arab Center Washington, D.C. to congratulate Ratib and basically also the KTH for on the occasion of the 11th International Palestinian Diaspora Conference. And we're delighted to join you and be a sponsor for this event. And I want to say thank you for all these years of KTH activities to mobilize, if you will, particularly young people who are our hope, particularly at this very difficult juncture that we face both as Arabs in general, but also as Palestinians in particular. We have been assigned basically the topic in this panel of mobilizing the diaspora, leadership, influence, and action for Palestine. I would like to preface my introductory remarks by saying essentially, as we all agree, I was just chatting with a friend as we walked in the room, comparing notes. We've been, he and I, in this country for more than 55 years, and we've never seen a challenging time like this. This is probably the most existential crisis we have faced. The region did face similar existential problems before, but never, synchronized with what we face here as diaspora or supporters of the Palestinian cause and other Arab causes. So essentially, when you look at our community, including even here in this room, it's a prototype, if you will, of the profile that we're all familiar with in the community. Palestinians, particularly in the diaspora, and Arab Americans in general, have long distinguished themselves as leaders across all kinds of fields, be it business, be it politics, be it academia, be it civil society, what have you. And the success has uplifted our communities over the past 100 years of immigration from the Arab world to this country, starting back in the 1800s. But at the same time, like I said earlier, the challenges that we face today are unique, and the last thing we need to do is to continue to play the game according to the old rules. Frankly, the old rules have become obsolete, and they are becoming more and more obsolete even by the minute in light of specific changes taking place in this town and in this country, and it behooves us, all of us, who are concerned about the cause of peace and justice in the Middle East, to adjust and to see how best we could essentially serve the cause of peace and justice in a much more effective way in the future. We have three speakers in this panel that I'm moderating this morning, and we will basically, they were introduced to you, and if you want more detail, feel free to do so online or in material distributed by the organizers. But what we would like to do is start with my good friend, George Salem. George Salem is a well-known personality in the Arab American community, and particularly in the Palestinian community. He's well known to those of us who have been surviving in Washington, D.C. for many years. He's been a dear colleague almost in every project we have been involved in, going back to the days of the AAUG, the National Association of Arab Americans, ADC, UPA, name it. George has been there for his community, and he's a person career-wise who didn't need to do that, frankly. He was and is a very successful person in his own right, but yet he dedicated his life, I think, to serving our people both here and in the Middle East. With that, I would like to invite George, who's joining us from home due to health reasons, George had a minor surgery. Don't be concerned. We wish him well. We wish him a quick recovery, but he still can't walk on his foot, the subject of the surgery that he just had. And so we wish him, as I said, full recovery and welcome him, and we look forward to hearing his remarks. I'll tell you, between George and Manal and Afif, just for your information and yours truly, there is 150 years of experience on this podium today. So this is ancient, the total opposite of the young people that organized this event and introduced the panel. We will give each speaker 10 to 12 minutes, and then we'll open the floor for Q&A. Your questions are welcome, but please, let's use written. There are cards, white paper. If not, on your table, raise your hand. Somebody will bring you some. And write your name, your affiliation, and your question legibly. I cannot read pharmacists' handwriting or medical people. We have a lot in our community. So please write legibly if you want me to be able to read your question, and I'll be glad to fit as many of them as possible. George, the microphone is yours. Good morning.
Good morning, Khalil. Good morning, everyone. Sorry I can't be with you in person, but I'm very much excited to be a part of this panel. I was asked to talk about my personal journey as a diaspora quote leader and how it connects to Palestine. In my own case, I started supporting the Palestinian cause in college, and to show you the progress of our movement I was in college in the 70s, so it shows you over the last 50 years, if we came to Washington by bus in support of Palestine, to Lafayette Park to demonstrate, if we had 10,000 people, it was a huge success. We were high-fiving one another. Today, you get hundreds of thousands in major cities across the world. I must say, I think that we have evolved so much in terms of our institutional development. As Khalil knows, when the delegation for the peace talks came during the first Bush administration, I was the channel that arranged most of the meetings and accompanied the leaders to the meetings. And those leaders would include Hanan Ashrawi, Faisal Husseini, Dr. Haidal Abdul Shafi later, Sadi Nusayba, and Zakaria Agha. I was it. I was the lawyer. There was no negotiation support unit. There was no institution to support them in any real legal way. I would be at my computer till 3 in the morning typing up notes and then faxing them to all the Abus, Abu Mazen, Abu Lutuf, Abu Ammar, of course, everybody. It was, by today's standards, very primitive. It was very fulfilling work, but and very hard work. And Khalil was right there with us, as were others. There was a push. When I moved to Washington in 1980, you could count the number of Arab American lawyers on the fingers of one hand that were supportive of Palestine. There were just a couple of Palestinian lawyers. We tried to organize a bar association. In fact, I drafted the Articles of Incorporation for the Palestine American Bar Association in the 70s, and we tried to organize in the early 80s. A fellow by the name of Joad George, a fellow Palestinian lawyer who's since passed, was very instrumental in all of this. And we couldn't find more than a half a dozen nationwide. Today, the Palestine American Bar Association has organized their inaugural conferences in a couple of weeks, 2 days of meetings with about 400 people, hundreds of Palestinians. Ordinary can leverage influence. I think in the process and in supporting investments in the West Bank and Gaza is critically important. A number of us have tried to do that. In my own case, I was the first Palestinian nominated by a president, confirmed by the Senate in the history of our country. And there have been just a couple of others. With all these hundreds of lawyers, we need to get people in these legal and policy roles in any administration, Republican or Democrat. And we need to progress through that process. Now you have, every administration has a few dozen political appointees that are Arab American. Some are Palestinian, some Hill staffers are Palestinian. And it's amazing how the member of Congress's views evolve on Palestine when they have someone who is Palestinian on their staff and can represent and present our narrative in a constructive way. I believe in institutions. We formed United Palestinian Appeal, a group of us in 1980. Now it gives hundreds of millions a year and has dozens of employees on the ground doing clinical psychology, support services, as well as providing food, desperately needed food, water, and medical supplies. We formed it based upon the Charter of United Jewish Appeal. It took a while to get it approved, and people pressured us to take the word Palestinian out. Of course, we didn't. One of the principal reasons we did it was to have the name Palestinian on a legitimate U.S. charity. We formed the Arab American Institute in 1985 to mainstream Arab Americans in the political process. It celebrates its 41st year. UPA is celebrating its 45th year. And during the course of the last 4 to 5 decades, many other institutions have been created and have done extremely well. CAIR, the organization that Manal chairs, is a case in point. I remember when CAIR was formed. And look at all that is involved in today. MPAC. On the Arab American front, we have so many organizations and think tanks that devote themselves to the Palestinian cause. So I think my time may have expired, but I just want to say, I think the more we can do politically, while wearing our Palestinianism on our sleeves, open declaring who we are, while acting as responsible professionals, is extremely important. Those of us that can afford to should invest in Palestine. The stock market there has done remarkably well over the past several years, and there are possibilities of investment in private equity and elsewhere. They need our support. They need our expertise, especially in the technology sector. The technology tower in Birzeit is amazing. All of the incubation that's been done there, which I had firsthand exposure to through my work with the Middle East Partnership for Peace Act when I chaired the board, has been amazing. In fact, some of the leading coding agencies have tested and compared the young tech professionals of Gaza, or the young students of Gaza, with those of Asian India, and found that the aptitude of the Gazans exceeds those of the Asian Indians. We have enormous potential if we can ever get out from under the yoke, the albatross of occupation, and be allowed to develop as a society with proper and transparent institutions for governance. Khalil, I think that I've exhausted my time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, George, for your remarks, and may I take this opportunity as a witness and a fellow traveler throughout those years to commend George for all the service that he has rendered on behalf of all of us in this community, and definitely for our people throughout the Middle East, particularly in Palestine. Our next speaker is Dr. Manal Fakhoury, who's chair of the board of directors of the Council on American Islamic Relations, CAIR, and you have 10 to 12 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Let's see, let me get my mic.
Yeah.
It's a moderator duty.
These things are a little bit, there we go.
Okay.
Made for little fingers, sorry.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and welcome. It's a pleasure to be here. And before I even start speaking and sharing, I just want to applaud you all for being here on a Friday morning, early. You made a decision to come to be part of the conversation. You care about the issue of Palestine. And look around the room and see how comfortable we are. We all have, warm clothes. The temperature is great. Everybody's sitting comfortably. How fortunate and how blessed and how privileged we all are. And every one of us could have walked into this room with something to complain about, every one of us. And we could also walk in and be grateful. So I'm going to start with just, gratitude. And my first gratitude really is for Ratib and for the work that he has put into this conference. Many of us just walked in, we showed up, we paid a registration fee. But you cannot imagine the amount of details and work that goes into pulling something like this together. So thank you, Ratib, for your vision. So this session is about our experience, it's about our vision, and it's a call to action. And interestingly, this morning I ran into my cousin Nader, who's here, so he could tell you if I'm fabricating my origin story of how we came to America. And so I visit many friends, and I also have attended many conferences, and what's interesting to me personally is how often that I'm in a room and most people are not born in Palestine, and I'm like one of 30 people in the room. I'm the only one that's born there. So alhamdulillah, so I was born there. My family immigrated in 1968, and we landed in the city of Angels in Los Angeles. And what's wonderful in my memory is, we were all English second language students. I don't remember struggling. We had to memorize the Pledge of Allegiance. We didn't even understand what we were memorizing. But that is how our beginning started. And we had a really nice neighbor who was a Jehovah's Witness, and he really showed us the way. And at one point, he was actually trying to convert us, and there was a point when my mom said, enough, we don't need any more lessons. But I do remember, my very early days in America, and what I would say is I come from a family that really never left Palestine. Like, if there was an example that my parents modeled, it was the connection to Palestine, it was the, contributions, it was, keeping in touch with what was happening back home. And at the same time, as I grew up in this country, I really became very active. So I guess if I was going to describe myself, I would always say that I have a nice type A personality. I love life. I love doing things. I love being part of things. And if I was going to offer even a suggestion early in my comments right now, one of the things that I think that has been missing is that you have those of us that come here, we come as guests instead of like full participants in America. And if we're going to have any influence, and what is influence? Influence is power, it's strength. It's by us becoming engaged. How can people care about us when they don't know us? I recall a moment at a chili cook-off for my kids' school, and I'm standing with a gentleman who runs the radio station, and he said to me, "You're the only Palestinian I know. I have many Jewish friends. I don't have any Muslim friends. I don't know any Muslims." And if you look in my community, it's a small community, but it's not, zero. It's not absent. And that is also the problem of where, or a deficiency. I'll move away from the word problem and say deficiency. When I walk into a Toastmaster meeting, when I walk into my Rotarian club, when I walk into the Chamber of Commerce, the Business Networking International Organization, I don't see Arabs, I don't see Muslims, I just don't see our community as active as it needs to be. And I think if there's anything that I would recommend while you are all here and listening is the way we change the narrative and change the way people understand us is by engaging and being involved. Now, not long ago, maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago, I remember, so I mentioned Toastmasters, which is a public speaking organization. Many of you have heard of it, maybe some of you are part of it. And it's easy entry, there's no coaches, it's basically run by the club. And people have said to me, Manal, like, why do you dabble with Toastmasters? Like, go to the National Speakers Association, that's where the professional people, they're getting paid to speak. And for me, it wasn't about getting paid to speak, but it was about understanding the importance of communication, storytelling, persuasion. And a friend of mine said to me during a lunch one day is, Manal, why do you invest so much time in Toastmasters? And at that moment, like the light bulb went off. And here's what I want you all to understand, is when I was a little girl and we came to America and we didn't have 24-hour news. The news came on like at 9 o'clock and it was done. Or the news may have come on at 7 p.m. and it was done. And so as kids, when the news would come on and my dad would be at work, my mom would be in the kitchen, we would yell, Mom, Mom, the news is on. Like that was our routine. Like we knew because they were going to talk about Palestine and what's happening. And they would bring the spokesperson to speak on the side of Israel, articulate, polished, easy to connect with. Then they would bring someone to represent our side of the story on the news. Broken English, heavy accent, hard to understand, hard to connect with. And I remember as a child, I would say, why don't we have anyone that can speak better for us? So in my core, communication became key. I understood that you can change the world. They say, like, how did Obama become who he was? He was an unknown senator. And then when he gave that speech to the DNC, I remember it. Like, I remember my daughter, Layla, being in the car, listening to what my kids, like, said to me, Mom, why don't we know any songs, like, from your generation? But you know who they know? They know Renee Montagne, they know Steve Zinsky, like, they know the reporters from NPR, because that's what I listened to when I was dropping them off at school. And so going back to the story, so, we mentioned Obama, is when Hanan Ashrawi, and I wanted to make that point because she's our keynote speaker, it wasn't until I heard her speak, I thought, thank God, we have someone that can speak our story, can speak the narrative. And alhamdulillah, now that is not the issue. We have thousands of wonderful representatives and speakers. So how do we make a difference, our call to action, and what do we need to do with all of us all around the world, especially now? I have an uncle that passed away recently, Allah yarhamu. Okay. And he said to me even years ago, social media is a change maker. And even my daughter, who worked at NBC Universal, and then she worked at LinkedIn, she said, what we're trying to do there at NBC is we're trying to control how to get the story out, because the story is no longer in our control. We the citizens, citizen reporting and citizen diplomacy makes a difference. The other thing I wanted to mention, it wasn't that long ago, I'm going to call it the gift of 2020. So if you remember, in 2020, we had COVID. But what really happened beautifully is now it turned us into these platforms like Zoom and Skype, and all of a sudden, I noticed that this country, like we, the Muslim Arab community, became connected, and everyone was starting to get connected. The fundraisers we used to have for politicians at our home and invite people to come to and drive and have the dinner, we no longer had to do that. We could now invite people all across the country and have successful fundraisers. So I don't want to miss the importance of how the world has changed. And because the world has changed, we need to take advantage of those tools. Another point that I wanted to mention is something that I'm very involved in that I love, and I hope that you guys will pay attention to, is the platform. It's another public speaking platform, and that is called the TED Talks. Are you all familiar with TED, the brand, Technology, Entertainment, and Design? And so I have been organizing TED Talks in my city now. This is my 11th year. And the event this year, our theme is Pivot. And one of the speakers that practiced yesterday with us, so I'm borrowing, just how important it is. He was bringing up how marketing has changed. If you look at the year, how many of you remember the Yellow Pages? And do you remember anyone? Does anyone remember the Yellow Pages? If you needed to find someone, an electrician, a haircut, you went to your Yellow Pages. And I remember when I first married my husband, we would pay thousands of dollars for our chiropractic medical ad in the Yellow Pages. And people would find ways to be creative, like the attorneys. They would be A, accident attorney, Bagan, to get their names up higher. Like that was the marketing strategy. Nobody goes to the Yellow Pages anymore. So now I ask you, our friends here, all of you that care about Palestine, see what's happening in real time, all the time. What can we do together and organize? And once in a while, somebody will say to me, how do you deal with your rage? You know, I just feel like I want to leave this country. But that is not the answer. And there are times when we say, when you don't know what to do, you do know what to do. There are so many opportunities, and it's making a difference. So for example, I used to call myself a cross-pollinator. So if you ask me for a moniker, hey, Manal, like, you know, you want to be a pharmacist? Are you an entrepreneur? Are you a change maker? I say, I'm a cross-pollinator. Meaning if I learn, I'm there, when I go to a Tony Robbins leadership program, I'm there listening, what can I learn from him and from this audience that I can take to Palestine? Because at the bottom and the core of my heart and my mind and my DNA and my cells is liberating Palestine. It always has been. You know, I'm from that generation. And so back to what can we take from each other? And it's this all, you know, what's important is knowing that action matters. So every time you have a conversation with someone, you are opening another opportunity to educate one person. You never know who is in the room. I have a coach that says, I will coach you, but you will never turn down a speaking opportunity. If you can promise me that, then I will coach you. And take a moment and think about the George Galloway story. I don't know how many of you know what I'm talking about, but it's a story that has stuck with me. And he said, back then, he was elected to Parliament, he's sitting in the building, he doesn't know what to do, it's his first day, there's a knock on the door, he's trying to decide if he's gonna answer the door or not. It's a student, he's not even Palestinian, I don't remember what he said, like Jordanian student. He starts to speak to him for maybe 3 hours about Palestine, about Palestine. That is how George Galloway became who he is and what we know, his advocacy for us. So in a nutshell, what I would say is what's important for us to take away from today, and I hope that you will all connect with each other because there's so much power and strength in these connections. But there's another area that we must focus on, and that is the collaboration and coordination. And that's not easy. You know, what we tend to see, and it's not unique only to our community, is very often is we all have egos. So your ego is not your amigo. And honestly, we can get so much further if we find ways to respectfully work with each other so that we can do new work and not duplicative work, but instead we amplify. So if there's anything I believe that is necessary in this present moment, as we continue to see sparks of hope, I see sparks of hope every day. If you look what's happening globally, you know, what the global community is doing, we have not gotten to the tipping point. What I want to say is I'm the cross-pollinator, but I'm also a tipping point. Like when you ask me, hey, Manal, what do you want? I want to get to the tipping point. And if there's anything that we can be certain is that oppression will not last. If you look and you ask yourself, and we should all be asking ourselves, what can we take away from the civil rights movement? What can we take away from apartheid South Africa? What are the lessons? We have all of that at our fingertips. And you know what you can take is that the global solidarity movement is there. Economically, we need to do what Italy did recently, and we will see a change. But please don't ever miss an opportunity to speak and integrate about Palestine, whether it's something you're wearing. So my little phone has a little sticker that says, I voted against genocide. I can't tell you how many conversations have come up when I'm actually at a Panera, you know, ordering, and the young girl says to me, I like your sticker. And I say to her, do you even know what it means? And she says, yes. So there is a shift. The other last comment that I'm going to make is how important it is for us, the veterans, the 150 some years that you guys told us we have together, to work with the next generation. One of the things that I used to despise when people say we're waiting on the next generation, I'm like, no, I have so much energy I want to give. What do you mean the next generation? Our generation still has a lot to do. We're the veterans. We can mentor. We have resources. We have lived experience. But the young people, mashallah alayhum, the things that we saw happen with encampments, et cetera, they are the heroes. So, and we can work together. And so, inshallah, liberation is on its way, but we have to believe, we have to continue to do the work, and don't miss an opportunity to speak about the liberation of Palestine. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Manal, for your hopeful message. Third, last but not least, is Ambassador Afif Safieh, who will approach the same topic, if you will, about our role as diaspora from his many years of experience as a diplomat representing Palestine throughout different countries. Afif is joining us at this point from his home in London, England, UK, one of the recent signatories to the recognition of the State of Palestine. Congratulations, Afif, and welcome.
Thank you, Khalil. Khalil, it's a privilege to appear on a panel with dear friends, and I'm so happy to see George Salem with us this morning. Khalil, during my 3 years in Washington, between 2005 2008, and on the lecturing circuit, I kept repeating that the Nakba is not an event that happened in a frozen moment between 47 and 49, but it is an ongoing process. And today our society is facing genocide in Gaza and a politicide, meaning the strangulation of our Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. Yes, I believe that today our society is wounded, our society is bleeding, yet we are undefeated, untamed, and undomesticated. Khalil, there is a concept in international relations which never really took off the ground and never became as fashionable as it was predicted. And the concept is global tribes. I believe that the Jews are a global tribe, obviously. The Armenians are a global tribe. The Chinese, a global tribe. And today, we, the Palestinians, who became the Jews of the Israelis, we are a global tribe. And what is important is that in the last few years, we have witnessed an awakening or a reawakening of our global tribe. From Scandinavia to Pennsylvania to California to Australia, Palestinian communities have really risen and are shouldering their responsibilities towards the national cause. And I personally believe, Khalil, that our Palestinian American community is superbly well equipped, politically, intellectually, numerically, and financially, to take the lead of that global tribe. Now, I personally believe that Netanyahu is the first person to have become aware recently that there is no military victory, no military solution to the Israeli-Palestinian problem. He is now facing the United Nations with a silly speech full of platitudes, with almost nobody in the General Assembly to applaud him the way he grew accustomed in the American Capitol on Capitol Hill. But I personally believe that today there is no military solution. It would be political and diplomatic. Two avenues for the birth of the Palestinian state recognized globally. The first avenue is if there is a massive change in Israeli public opinion. The second is a change of American foreign policy in the Middle East. I personally believe that, unfortunately, Israeli public opinion has been fanatized and radicalized beyond reversibility in the predictable future. What is acceptable to the Israelis is not acceptable to us Palestinians, and what is acceptable to us Palestinians is not acceptable to the Israelis. So I believe our future path should be how to change American foreign policy in the Middle East. And I personally believe that the battle for Washington is winnable, and you will be the artisans and the architects of that change. Now, America is a fascinating society. It's a nation of nations where every country, every continent, every culture is represented within your ranks. And we Palestinians are known to love our country of adoption as much as we love our country of origin. Yet, it wasn't easy throughout the last decades to be a Palestinian American, to be an Arab American, or to be a Muslim American, because up to today, our country of adoption has not been sensitive to the ordeals and tragedies in our country of origin. Yet, I believe the battle for Washington is winnable through your endeavors in now and in the future. Now, in our international system today, America is a dominant player. And I personally believe for America, which is the nation of nations, it is wise for America to adopt non-alignment as a foreign policy, because aligning itself on one belligerent player in a regional conflict is not only antagonizing all the other regional players, but it is antagonizing, offending, and alienating part of the American social fabric, the national fabric. And I personally believe change is on its way to come. And as you all know, support on Capitol Hill among those useful idiots, to use a word of Netanyahu, the number of useful idiots is shrinking, and Netanyahu will be aware of that very soon. The changing factors in America that are promising are the following. One, change in public opinion. And a recent opinion poll tells us that 60% of American society is in favor of American recognition of Palestinian statehood. All opinions poll shows us that there is a massive change within the supporters of the Democratic Party, not only among the youth, but all throughout the generations. The American Jewish community is increasingly uncomfortable with Israeli misbehavior. Jews in America grew accustomed to be always at the forefront of civil rights movements, etc. And for the last 50 years, they have been reduced in defensible. And we are seeing the multiplication, you are seeing the multiplication of demonstrations in Washington and New York, not in our name. And this is a factor very encouraging for the future, where there will be a convergence between us who want to liberate the territories occupied by Israel and those who want to liberate Israel of its occupied territories, because they know the erosion and the moral corrosion that occupation is creating within Jewish and Israeli society. Now, I personally believe that our message to Jewish communities is the following. A state is not only a right for us Palestinians, it's a moral obligation and an ethical duty for Jews, because they, more than anybody else, know the price that we have had to pay individually and collectively so that Israel is created in the Middle East. And I believe many are becoming aware that it's a duty for Jews and Israelis to help in the birth of the Palestinian state. Now, I personally believe that one has to remind Republican Party that even Trump in 2015, when he started campaigning for the first presidential election he underwent, he spoke of a neutral America in the Middle East, which is another way of speaking of even-handedness. It's unfortunate that he was beginning to win certain primaries, even with the position he was then adopting of a neutral America in the Middle East, until he was embraced by the Christian Zionists and some pro-Israeli Jewish oligarchs. It's then that he aligned himself on the Israeli preference. Yet I believe that today, within Republican ranks, there is great discomfort at what they see as the tail wagging the dog rather than the dog wagging the tail. And that often he has had to abandon American national interests in favor of the Israeli preference. Yet many are expecting that in the encounter he will have in the coming 24 hours with Netanyahu, Netanyahu would have a difficult moment in this discussion to come. Dear friends, I believe that we, the Arabs, naively or not, have been waiting for 50 years for what I call the Eisenhower moment. Eisenhower in 56, in the middle of a presidential election, which usually incites the candidate to be prudent, took the risk of a phone call to Ben Gurion. And believe you me, Ben Gurion was a roaring lion, and Netanyahu, compared to Ben Gurion, looks like a lamb. Took the phone and told Ben Gurion that he had to withdraw out of the Sinai, and within 24 hours, it occurred. So we, the Arabs, we, the Palestinians, are waiting for the Eisenhower moment, and I believe that President Trump would be well advised to believe that Palestine is the test for American credibility, American respectability, American believability, and American lovability. And I believe he's not insensitive to the argument of lovability. And I believe our battle for Washington is winnable. And I don't believe that you have to wait until the end of the mandate of Mr. Trump. We are impatient. We deserve justice. We need to see the end of occupation. And I believe he should stick to the pledge he took in the meeting with Arab and Muslim leaders, that he will deter, dissuade, and compel Netanyahu not to annex the West Bank, but on the contrary, to start preparation for the cessation of the war and the slaughter in Gaza, and thinking of how to relinquish territory in the West Bank that was occupied in 1967. And Khalil, I naively believe that a territory occupied in 67 in 6 days can also be evacuated in 6 days, so that the Israelis can rest on the 7th and we can engage in the fascinating journey of national reconstruction and economic build-up. Thank you, Hadi.
Thank you, Afif. Again, just a reminder, if you have a question, please send it up here or just write it on one of the papers at your table, raise your hand. One of the staff people will pick it up from you, identify yourself, write clearly so I can read it, and feel free to send it anytime. We got about 15 minutes left for Q&A. And let me just conclude with a couple of remarks of my own. I fully appreciate Manal's call for more involvement on the part of all of us in all these organizations that are all over the place in our community. And it's very important. You know, people over the years, after 45 years of involvement in Arab American politics, people ask, you know, how come the Jewish community has more influence than we do? I'll tell you one thing. I mean, there are many answers to this question, but one of them that stuck with me over the years based on my experience is the fact that out of 5.9 million American Jews, let's say 6 million of them in this country, 5.9 they say, 2 of them, 2 million, are affiliated with one of their organizations. Our community is about 3 to 4 million, 3.5 to 4 million Arab Americans, plus 7 to 8 million Muslim Americans. And we, all of us, if we are to be honest, if I add up right now the membership of all of us, I'm talking about the honest membership, not the exaggerated one, we do not bring together more than 100,000 people. This is not enough, ladies and gentlemen. It is not enough to face the dual challenge that we are facing today. What do we mean by a dual challenge? Today, as we speak, a meeting is taking place in New York after Netanyahu finished his speech. He spoke at 9 o'clock this morning when we started our conference. He's meeting with Tony Blair and company, the hustlers of both kind of the Anglo-American hustlers, Kushner, Blair and company. What are they talking about? They are talking about something called the GTA, the Gaza Transitional Authority. Folks, colonialism is not dead. In 2025, Mr. Blair is being appointed as Grand Commissioner over Palestine for the next 5 years. That's after the ceasefire is reached in Gaza. Palestinians do not need a great commissioner. This is not colonialism. As Afif Safieh made it famous about 35 years ago, Afif, I don't know if you remember, you said something about we are not the children of a lesser God. We're not. We can run our own affairs and we can have our own state based on basically our own struggle, our own experience, our own talents. Second, I would say Manal reminded me when she said there needs to be a bit more coordination. Yes, 1982, the Israeli invasion of Lebanon forced us as Arab Americans to move closer to coordination. What did we do then? We formed something called the Council of Presidents of National Arab American Organizations. And I chaired that for a couple of years, and we pressured and succeeded in forcing the administration to accept that council as the only mechanism when they want to meet with Arab Americans. And the State Department at the time agreed on a monthly meeting with that council representing the whole community. It's time to revive a concept of this sort so that we can be united in terms of our message and clear in terms of our message to the administration. All right, questions. How will we stop Trump from giving away Gaza? I guess he's not listening to you and me, is he? He approved GTA. As a matter of fact, his son-in-law, Kushner, is one of the beneficiaries. And those guys are essentially going after the $100 billion that they anticipate Gaza reconstruction is going to bring about. So they're going after that money. How do we stop him? Again, look, we have to use every mechanism at our disposal. We have to have a joint agenda, all of us, across the community, and we have to fight this time both battles. Look, we as a community over the past 100 years have fought many battles, but never a kind of a two-pronged battle like this one. Gaza and Palestine, Palestine is being liquidated as a cause, and if we continue to sit and watch, it will be liquidated. You know that bu'bu', the threat we kept scaring our kids about, the liquidation of Palestine is happening right now. Two, your rights and mine in this country. There are several questions about that. I'll tell you, I've been in this country for 55 years. I came here as a student from the third world to the fourth world to the state of Arkansas to pursue my higher education. And sorry about that if you're from Arkansas. But I'll tell you, I briefed 5 presidents of the United States over the years about Palestine. I briefed 3 CENTCOM commanders. I briefed dozens and dozens of leaders in Congress, Senate, and House. I briefed the head of the CIA. I briefed the head of the FBI. I lectured at almost every base where there is some kind of Middle East-related center discussing Middle East policy. And guess what? Last month, on my return from overseas, I had to be pulled aside based on a folder about that thick from an extremist American Jewish organization asking me who did I meet with in terms of Palestinian leaders in the region, and not who I am as an American citizen and what do I do here and who have I dealt with, but this is what is happening to us here. So we have to fight this battle, and we have to fight the battle back home. So get off your tushes and let's fight. Otherwise, we're going to be railroaded. Hassan wants to know, what do we think the effect of the recent recognition of the state of Palestine is, and how do we capitalize on this? Manal, please go ahead and answer this one. And by the way, after lunch, I'm supposed to engage in a conversation with Hanan Ashrawi, and that's the first question I'm going to ask her. So be there.
Yeah, thank you. And great question. And I think, you know, earlier when Khalil was being introduced as an analyst, and I thought that's not my, you know, area of expertise, and we have to respect areas of expertise. But I think what we do know is that the recognition of Palestine on a superficial, symbolic level is great, but then you have to go deeper and translate what does it really mean in terms of, you know, getting Israel off the hook in terms of what they're responsible for. So ultimately, I think we as a community have to come together to make sure that we're making the correct recommendation, because I think even within our community, many of us have said, we're done with two-state. It's a one-state. You know, we want total, you know, recognition of Palestine and the ability to move through the country equal rights for everyone. But then you still have a segment in the community that thinks, let's get a two-state solution. How do you get a two-state solution? What percentage are you getting back? So I would say I'll turn it back to Khalil to give a little bit more insight and wisdom. But, on a level of conversation with ordinary Americans, like I have my friends sending me, messages like, isn't this good? They're recognizing Palestine. And again, if you don't know politics, you don't know analysis, it sounds great, but what does that really translate into on a deeper level? Khalil, if you want to add.
Yeah. Basically, again.
Khalil, if you allow me just a few words.
Yeah, please, go ahead, Afif.
No, I believe that the recognition of the state of Palestine that is taking place these days by interesting and important, significant players in the international system is not unimportant. It's more than symbolic. And I personally believe that its importance resides in the fact that the international community is signaling what should be the finality of any diplomatic endeavor in the future. So, up to now, the Israelis, because of the flaw in the previous peace process, they believe that they can be entitled, because of the asymmetry and the imbalance of power, that they can decide the contours and the content of the peace that is obtainable. And Israeli citizens consider that if they vote to labor, they might give us back 85% of the occupied territories. If they vote to Likud, they give us 40%. If they vote to Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, they give us a kick in the bum, etc., etc. No, peace is too important to be left to the Israelis to decide upon, and I am in favor of the fact that the international community signals to the local actors, the belligerent parties, what the world expects from them. So that's important significance of what has taken place in the previous. Now, on the other issue, it's said that within Palestinian society, we have several issues that we need to get rid of. One is some of us have elevated pessimism as though it is the only criteria of measuring one's patriotism. We compete on who is more pessimistic. The other thing we have to get rid of is that we have a temptation of always going to the maximalist possibility, even if it is unattainable. Now, the issue of one state or two states, which has been a distraction, in my opinion, is something we should discuss in a very mature way and in a very rational way. Somebody commented on this debate by saying, it seems to me it's as though those who speak of the one-state solution today, it's as though this person has been beaten by a lightweight boxer and says, next time send me a heavyweight boxer and you will see what I'll do with him. Having not succeeded in establishing up to now a state on 22%, what's the alternative? We want a state on 100% without any change in the balance of power. So I believe we need to have a rational discussion around the one-state, two-state solution. I believe in the two-state solution because any political movement has to distinguish between the three layers of political expectation. There is the desirable, the possible, and the acceptable. And I personally believe the balance of power in any foreseeable future, in any projection into the future, does not give us the one-state solution as a reachable objective. So I believe it has been a distraction among the Palestinian intellectual community, and I believe still that the two-state solution is within reach in our lifetime.
Thank you, Afif. Thank you. We have a question quickly. We started a little late, so I hope the organizers don't mind taking a couple more minutes. Mustafa Barghouti wants to know or proposes the establishment of a Pan-American Palestinian organization that would coordinate. There is at least 3 of those, by the way, but they are not functional. My recommendation, again, based on many years of experience in Palestinian politics, American Palestinian politics, this time, if we are to have a serious and effective Pan-American Palestinian organization, it has to be purely American. It cannot be linked to the authority, and it cannot be linked to anybody overseas. If we are to be effective with our government here, it has to be purely American. They are more receptive to those of us who are interacting with them as American citizens rather than as representing somebody abroad. So I agree with you that there should be one, but I think it should be more focused on, on the American scene rather than allowed to be just kind of a mouthpiece for somebody else outside. With that said, I think our time is up. I'd like to thank our speakers. Appreciate you taking time of your busy schedule to be with us today. I know we have enough questions to spend the rest of the day answering them. Feel free to come. I'm sure Manal is gracious, and I'll be more than glad to also answer some of them. And thank you again for your participation. And I would like to invite the moderator to come up and move us to the next phase of the program. Thank you.